Good day everyone. We are the Group 5 and we will discuss about the socio-political issue in the Philippine history.
The first topic that we are going to talk about in this lesson is the history of death penalty in the Philippines. Spanish period 1521 to 1898. Spanish colonizers brought with them medieval Europe's penal system, including executions. Capital punishments during the early Spanish period took various forms, including burning, decapitation, drowning, flaying, garrote, hanging, shooting, stabbing, and others. Capital punishments were enshrined in the 1848 Spanish Código Penal and was only imposed on locals who challenged the established authority of the colonizers. Between 1840 to 1857, recorded death sentences totaled 1,703 with 46 actual executions. Filipinos who were meted with the death penalty included Magat Salamat 1587 and the native clergies Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, who were garroted in 1872, and Dr. Jose Rizal, executed on December 30, 1896. All of them are now enshrined as heroes. The next one is the American period, from 1898 to 1934. The American colonizers, adopting most of the provisions under the Código Penal of 1848, retained the death penalty, although the Código Penal was then revised in 1932. Treason, parricide, piracy, kidnapping, murder, rape, and robbery with homicide were considered capital offenses and warranted the death penalty. The Sedition Law of 1901, Brigandage Act of 1902, Reconcentration Act of 1903, and Flag Law of 1907 were enacted to sanction the use of force, including death, against all nationalist Filipinos. Macario Sakay was one of those sentenced to die for leading a resistance group. He was sentenced to die by public hanging. The capital punishment continued to be an integral part of the pacification process of the country, to suppress any resistance to American authority. The next one is the Marcos years, from 1965 to 1986. Deterrence became the official justification for the imposition of the death penalty. This is the same justification used for the declaration of martial law in 1972. The number of capital crimes increased to a total of 24. Some crimes which were made punishable by death through laws and decrees during the Marcos period were subversion, possession of firearms, arson, hijacking, embezzlement, drug-related offenses, unlawful possession of firearms, illegal fishing, and cattle roasting. Jaime Jose, Basilio Pineda, and Edgardo Aquino were executed for the gang rape of movie star Maggie de la Riva in 1972. Despite prohibitions against the public executions, the execution of the three was done in full view of the public. 19 executions took place during the pre-martial law period. 12 were executed during martial law. Senator Benigno Aquino Jr. was sentenced to die by firing squad for charges of murder, subversion, and illegal possession of firearms in 1977. The last judicial execution under the Marcos years was in October 1976, when Marcelo San Jose was executed by electrocution. Similar to the reasons for the imposition of capital punishment during the colonial periods, the death penalty during the Marcos regime was imposed to quell rebellion and social unrest. The fourth period that we are going to talk about is the administration of President Corazon Cuanco Aquino from 1986 to 1992. The death penalty was abolished under the 1987 Constitution. The Philippines became the first Asian country to abolish the death penalty for all crimes. All death sentences were reduced to reclusion perpetua or life imprisonment. In 1988, the military started lobbying for the imposition of the death penalty for crimes committed by the CPP-NPA. The fifth one is the administration of President Fidel Valdez Ramos from 1993 to 1998. A series of high-profile crimes during this period, including the murder of Eileen Sarmenta and Alan Gomez, created a public impression that heinous crimes were on the rise. The Ramos administration reimposed the death penalty by virtue of Republic Act No. 7659 in December 1993 to address the rising criminality and incidence of heinous crimes. The death penalty law lists a total of 46 crimes punishable by death. 25 of these are mandatory, while 21 are death eligible. Republic Act No. 8177 mandates that a death sentence shall be carried out through lethal injection. The second to the last administration is President Joseph Ejercito Estrada from 1998 to 2001. Leo Etchegaray was executed in February 1999 and was followed by 6 other executions for various heinous crimes. In 1999, the bumper year for executions, the national crime volume, instead of abating, ironically increased by 15.3%, or a total of 82,538 from 71,527 crimes in the previous years. Estrada issued a de facto moratorium on executions in the face of church-led campaigns to abolish the death penalty in observance of the Jubilee year. The last administration that we are going to talk about in this topic of the lesson is the administrations of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and President Rodrigo Roa Duterte from 2001 to present. Arroyo publicly stated that she is not in favor of executions, but due to the rise in crimes related to drugs and kidnappings that targeted the Filipino-Chinese community, she announced that she would resume executions to sow fear into the hearts of criminals. Arroyo then lifted the de facto moratorium issued by Estrada on December 5, 2003. The Philippine government began in 2020 to seriously consider legislation to reinstate the death penalty. The move in Congress came a week after President Duterte used his State of the Nation address in July to call for capital punishment by lethal injection for drug offenders. But reinstating the death penalty would violate the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or ICCPR, which the Philippines ratified in 2007.
Good day everyone, I will discuss to you guys about the unending drug war. Philippine War on Drug. Since taking office on June 30, 2016, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has carried out a war on drugs that has led to the deaths of over 12,000 Filipinos to date, mostly urban poor. At least 2,555 of the killing had been attributed to the Philippine National Police. Duterte and other senior officers has instigated an incident, the killing in campaign that would amount to crime against humanity. Human Rights Watch research has found the police are falsifying evidence to justify the unlawful killing. Despite growing calls for an investigation, Duterte has vowed to continue the campaign. Large-scale extrajudicial violence as a crime solution was marker of Duterte's 22 years tenure as a mayor of Davao and the cornerstone of his president campaign. On eve of his May 9, 2016 election victory, Duterte told the crowd more than 300,000, "If I make it to the presidential place, I will do just what I did as a mayor. Your drug pusher, hold up men, and do nothing. You better get out because I will kill you." So guys, I will show you some video about the drug war in Philippines that's hurting some children.
Nakita ko po si Papa, may hawak po na ID, tapos pinapakita niya po dun sa may pulis. Tapos habang nakatutok sa ulo niya yung baril.
Sir, kung may kasalanan man po ako o wala, maawa naman po kayo. Huwag niyo na lang po akong patayin kung gusto niyo. Ikulong niyo na lang po ako. Kasi kawawa yung mga anak ko.
Naisip ko po, sabi ko, sa dami-dami po ng tao dyan sa labas po. Bakit po yung papa ko pa yung pinili? Saglit-saglit lang po, tapos pinutukan na po siya.
Jennifer was only 11 years old when she saw her father being killed during an anti-drug operation by the police.
So the next topic is Philippine drug war killing rise during pandemic. Drug war killing in the Philippines in 2020 increased by more than 50% during the early month of pandemic. The police reported in November that since Rodrigo Duterte became president, nearly 8,000 alleged drug suspects has been killed during police operation. In June, the United Nations Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights validated many of this killing. Domestic human rights group and the Government Commission on Human Rights believe that actual toll is triple that figure. Philippine Rights Monitor reported in 2020 that more than 160 political activities has been killed since Duterte became president in 2016. A number of victims has early been red tagged or reg-vate by the Philippine military, the police, the local anti-communist group. Among those who target for reg tagging were celebrities who expressed support for a group that government accused of having communist links. The media also under a new attack in June. A court convicted Maria Ressa, promoted head of the news website Rappler, on political motivation charges of cyber libelling streaming from Rappler, presenting report on the drug war. In July, the Duterte-controlled the Philippine Congress voted not to extend the franchise of ABS-CBN, the country's largest television network, which has often criticized the government drug war, forcing the network closure. As respect for human rights in the Philippines spiral downward, concerned governments, a UN agency will need to press the Duterte government harder to halt its atrocity and hold those responsibility to account, Robertson said. Manila, January 13, 2021. The Philippine government drug war killing intensifying during COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. As did unnecessary arresting during lockdown, Human Rights Watch said today in its World Report 2021 attack by the police military. The unifying gunmen on left activity community and indigenous leaders, human rights defensor, and journalists also increased during the year. The Duterte administration appeared to take advantage of COVID-19 curfew in 2020, expanded in gruesome and bloody war on drug, said Phil Robertson, GTPI Asia Director, Human Rights Watch. At the same time, government red-veiting at leftist activities, right defenders, and others have put them in greater risk to deadly attack. The right situation in the Philippines worsened during the pandemic as the government imposed strict lockdown measurements that result in the arrest of increation of 10,000 Filipino. In condition, the greatly increased their health risks. In the early days of lockdown, police subjected curfew violation, including children, to abuse treatment. I will show you again some video about the police fake evidence in Philippine drug war killing.
My campaign against drug will not stop until the last pusher and the last drug lord are
all over the city of Manila. At the scenes of these incidents, guns are found next to the suspect, and the police claim that they engaged in a shootout with an armed drug suspect.
He pulled the firearm that we are seeing in his hand. But unfortunately, he shot to death.
Pagkaano ho namin, yung dinagsana siya ng mga tao, tapos may mga media na, bigla ho nagkabaril.
Nakahiga na po. Patay na po siya, yung kamay niya po nakaganon na. Tapos yung baril na nakalagay sa kanya, isang dangkal lang po yung layo.
They showed us a photograph of the body exactly how we found it last night, but without a gun laying next to it.
COVID-19. At the time of writing, the Philippines had one of the highest recorded numbers of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Southeast Asia, with 400,000 cases as of mid-November. The Duterte administration response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been led by former military officers, using police supported by the military, which has resulted in serious human rights abuse, abusive law enforcement actions, and freedom of expression restrictions. Since March 16, the government has imposed varying types of quarantines and lockdowns to contain the spread of the virus. Abuses reported include local officials putting curfew violators in dog cages or exposing them to hours standing in the summer sun as a form of punishment. 2 children who were arrested after curfew were put inside the coffin by local officials. In April, 3 LGBT people were accosted by authorities for violating curfew. Officials humiliated them by forcing them to dance and kiss each other in public. Many people arrested for violating COVID-19 regulation were thrown into overcrowded detentions, where social distancing is impossible and increasing the risk of contracting the virus. The C-19 law that President Duterte signed on March 24 criminalized the spreading of false information with up to 2 months in prison and a 1 million peso fine. This law has been used to censor free speech in cases filed against social media users among the journalists who criticize or even poke fun of government's response. Reports of domestic violence have risen during lockdown restrictions. Groups such as UNICEF and Save the Children have raised alarm about the impact of pandemic and the lockdown have on the welfare of the children, particularly concerning child sexual and physical abuse.